Hey, Eagle fans, this is EaglefanKarl, and this is going to be my reaction video to the Eagles' Monday night win against the Oakland Raiders. You'll notice the surroundings around me are a little different. That's because we're up in Pennsylvania, spending the Christmas holidays with some family, and it was probably good the game went the way it did. People are, whenever I'm staying with family and everything, they're always, especially when it's a late night game, they're always worried I'm going to be up and rowdy and loud at the end of the game. Well, I didn't really have a problem with a lot of yelling and screaming during this game because it was not that much to cheer about. But the Raiders weren't doing that well either, so I wasn't getting upset necessarily at that end. I was getting more upset at the offense, which was just more frustration than anything. And at the end of the game, even when we made the big plays to, get the field goal and then the very play at the very end that sealed the win, it was more relief than excitement. So I really didn't even have to worry about cheering for that. So it was sort of a rare situation where I didn't even have to really try and stay quiet. I just stayed quiet naturally because there just wasn't a lot to cheer at in this game. And I know a win is a win, but I've got a lot of concern about this team now going into the playoffs. I'll get into a little more detail about that in a moment when I'm going through my duds. But really, a lot of concern as we go into the playoffs in this. And really, like I said, just more a feeling of relief after this game was over than it was of excitement or celebration. We do, obviously, the big thing, of course, is we do have the number one seed now locked up for the playoffs. So all our playoff games are going to be at home. Maybe playoff game will be at home. And that's certainly a concern, is that we might end up being a one and done after the way this game went. I don't think all hope is lost yet, but there are definitely some major warning signs in this game that I think we really need to be worried about if we're Eagles fans. Like I said, I'll get into that, though, as I do my duds. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the duds for this game, which I had no problem coming up with 5 duds for this game. And as the way this game went, it probably does not surprise you that most of my duds are going to be on offense, but my first dud is going to be on defense, and that's Jalen Mills. He got absolutely burned on that double move again. Same kind of thing that they had been doing to him last week against the Giants, and it's clear that the Raiders saw that and planned for that, and he bit hard on that fake and let the guy get behind him. I also want to give a dishonorable mention, frankly, to Rodney McLeod, because as you look at the replay on that, it looked like he was supposed to be the safety high in that situation, so he's not allowed to let the receiver get behind him and by him as well. So just as more of the blame has to go on Jalen Mills for that, but a lot of blame can also go on Rodney McLeod for that play as well. So really, those two guys, Mills will be the number 5 dud of the week, but Rodney McLeod's got to get a dishonorable mention for the way that play went down. Of course, the other thing you've got to think about when you're talking about Jalen Mills is just an absolutely, an interception that's in his hands that he ends up dropping. He's got that ball. He needs to be able to wrap that thing up and bring that thing in because ultimately the Raiders ended up missing a field goal on that drive. But if they make that field goal, those 3 points are absolutely directly on Jalen Mills. So it was sort of another down mark that he had this game, in a game where the defense ended up playing real well and ended up saving us this game. My number 4 dud is going to be Lane Johnson. The left side of the line has its excuses as to why that side of the line didn't play well because of the injuries. But the right side of the line, you've got 2 guys that made the Pro Bowl. That's supposed to be the strong part of our line. And really, they did not play well. Lane Johnson, there was 2 flags against him. One of them, I can see why he was upset about it. But the other one, it's just a situation where the play's going outside. You've got to get outside leverage on your guy, and you can't let the guy get to that outside shoulder. So that results in the hold. So really, you've only got yourself to blame because it looked to me like he just was not in the right position to make the block there, and that caused the hold to get called. So in that instance, Lane Johnson's got to take some blame on that. My number 3 dud is going to be Alshon Jeffrey. He was absolutely invisible in this game. Now, some of that might have been on Nick Foles, but Alshon Jeffrey, I don't think did that great of a job of trying to get open either. And there was a couple times when you did see him, it looked like he just didn't have the motivation to be playing in that game like he did in other games, and it just looked like he was flat and his performance was flat. So I think a lot of it goes on Foles, but some of it also has to go on Alshon Jeffrey. My number two dud has got to be the head coach, though. The play calling in this game was really curious. You've got a game where you've got a backup quarterback who's struggling, and it's a close game. The most we were ever down was 3 points, and that wasn't even that long that we were down 3 points. And so you've really got to ask the question, why are you throwing the ball so much? They had 38 throws versus 21 running attempts. So it should not have been that lopsided in terms of run versus pass. If anything, it should have been the opposite. You should have been trying to run the ball a lot more in that game. Now, I think some of that was the Raiders' defense. They just were, after it became clear that Foles was struggling, they did not give him any respect, and they were playing guys in the box and the like, so that they were really just keying on stopping the run. So the running game wasn't really getting much going. But I think this is one of those times where, as a head coach, you've just got to say, we've got to stay committed to this run game as long as the game is close, and we just got to continue to keep trying it. And there was a lot of times where I thought they got away from the run, and they were trying to pass the ball in a game where the backup quarterback is not playing that well. You've got a cold, windy night. That's a game that's screened for them to be throwing the ball more. And Doug, I think, fell a little bit into some of the Andy mentality where he was probably throwing the ball a little bit more than he needed to, and he probably should have stuck with the run a little bit more. Is there any question, really, though, who is going to be my main dud for this game? And unfortunately, it's got to be Nick Foles. He was my number one stud the week before. He's got to be my number one dud this week. I had said before that when an Eagles, if a quarterback ever has a game where they win the game and they don't have any turnovers, I'd never list them as a dud. Well, that can't be said in this game. Yes, they won the game, but Nick Foles did not play well. He turned the ball over. The one interception that he did have was his fault, even though Ertz got his hand on it. It was a play that it was a poorly thrown ball. There was other times where he easily could have been picked, where the defender didn't make the play. So you put all of that together, and really it ends up being a situation where Foles he looked like a backup quarterback in this game, and that's something that's really got to get taken care of. Now, I think that one of the things that Peterson's going to have to do is he's going to have to play Foles quite a bit in this Dallas game. Even if he doesn't want to, he's got to play Foles quite a bit in this game. He's got to get more reps with these wide receivers, and they've really got to make sure that this offense is in a lot better shape going into the playoffs. Because after the Dallas game, then you've got the bye. So you're talking about, if you don't play him much in the Dallas game, you're really talking 3 weeks between now and when they're going to play another meaningful game. You can't do that. You've got to get Foles some more reps with the first team, and that team's got to get some more reps with him as well to really get that chemistry down with the wide receivers. Because after last night's game, that really has me concerned. Let's go ahead and take a look at what actually did win us this game and some of the studs that we had for this game. And as I did with the duds, I only had one defensive guy on. This time I'm only going to have one offensive guy on the studs list. My number 5 stud is going to be Jason Kelce. He's the one that really, I think, helped break that touchdown pass that we did have on the screen to Ajayi. Ajayi can't make it because of the fumble, so you can't put him on a studs list on a game like that. But Kelce's the one that really, I think, made that play happen downfield. He showed once again how versatile he can be as a center, and it was clear that, I think it's clear he got robbed when it comes to the Pro Bowl, and he showed last night why that was. My number 4 stud is going to be Ronald Darby. Comes up with a huge interception at the end of the game to put us in a position where all our offense had to do was then get 25 yards. That was such a huge play because for most of that fourth quarter, after it was tied up and the game was just sort of going back and forth, the problem we had in that situation was their field position was so much better than ours. We were starting almost all our drives deep in our own territory, and they were starting close to midfield. And we needed some sort of a play. I was thinking it was going to be a special teams play that was really going to turn that around for us. But it ended up being a huge turnover that ended up turning that around for us. So Ronald Darby makes the huge interception, puts us in a situation where the offense really only needs to get about 25 yards to get into field goal range. And that's exactly then what the offense does. So Ronald Darby, though, is the one that sets all that up. He's not higher on this list because he did have some issues earlier in the game, but at the critical time, he did come up with the big play with the interception. So for that reason, he's my number 4 stud of the game. My number 3 stud of the game is going to be Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins, once again, was all over the field, ends up coming up with a big forced fumble when they're deep in our territory, and really ends up saving what could have been a game-winning drive for the Raiders, and ends up stopping that. So Malcolm Jenkins comes up with a big play when we really needed it, and for that reason, he's my number 3 stud of the game. If we're talking about turnovers, the number 2 stud of the game is Patrick Robinson. Patrick Robinson has been playing real well this season. We missed him in the game against the Giants when he went out with the concussion, but it was clear that he was back, and he was absolutely 100% in this game, and he comes up with a huge interception, which is the first of 3, back-to-back turnovers that happen in the game, but he ends up with a huge interception there, and that was absolutely, once again, at an important time in the game when we needed something that was going to turn the momentum in that game. Patrick Robinson comes up with the big play and ends up stopping their offense when they were driving. But number 1, when you look at this game, the defense clearly won this game, and the defense had some lapses here and there, but there was one guy that I thought played solid through the whole game, and that was Chris Long. Chris Long played an absolutely solid game from start to finish in this thing. It was clear that, he was the guy that was really going to be the one that was going to sort of turn things. He caused a forced fumble later that they ended up recovering, but ultimately, it ended up killing their drive. So on a 3rd down, comes up with the huge play. So, Chris Long is the guy that I think played consistently throughout this whole game. And for that reason, he was my number 1 stud. I think he's been a unsung player through most of this season in terms of his play. He's gotten a lot of credit for what he's done off the field this year, and especially what he's doing from a charitable standpoint with his salary. But, his play has been right up there with what he's doing off the field as well. His play has been top-notch. He's been a great guy to come in and give some breaks to some of the defensive end. He's in that second group in terms of the defensive line. In the game where you lose Brandon Graham to an injury, Chris Long came in there and was really able to fill a huge role and fill a huge void with losing Brandon Graham. So for that reason, I think you really got to give a lot of credit to Chris Long and the game he had. This defense won this game for us last night because the offense was struggling so much. So the defense had some lapses early, but it was clear in the second half. It's like they flipped the switch and they were like, hey, listen, if we're going to win this game, we're going to have to bail the offense out like the offense bailed us out the week before. And that's exactly what the defense did in this game. And Chris Long was a big reason for that. And for that reason, he's my number 1 stud of the game. Those are my thoughts, though. What do you think? Leave your comment below and give me an idea. If you think I'm being too hard on Nick Foles, given the situation, should I be a little easier on him? Are there guys that you think that I missed for either the studs or duds list? Are there other guys on defense that you think we should recognize based on how we won that game last night? Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. I'll do a preview prediction video for the Cowboys game, but once again, in these games where one team has nothing to play for because they're out of the playoff picture and one team has nothing to play for because they've got everything wrapped up, it's sometimes hard to do predictions in those kind of videos, but I will go ahead and check in before that Dallas game and let you know what I think. Until then, fly Eagles fly.